what should those robots or virtual agents or synthetic agents or whatever it is be like, so that we humans are comfortable in interacting with them.
So it doesn't really matter if you go to a store that is selling Samsung products or if you go to a cosmetic store such as Sephora. Customers are looking for kind of a holistic experience.
Chatting with ChatGPT and stuff, and I'm actually polite. I almost say, can you please help me? Welcome to the Next Gen Retail podcast and a new episode. I'm John Karsberg, your host, and I'm the head of strategy and insights with Workshop. And as you know, we're a group of 12 people sitting in the Next Gen Retail Hub, and we're curious about lots of things. And we try to use that this podcast to understand a little bit more. And today we're particularly curious about the service encounter and like the physical store and the meeting then between a customer and store staff. With me today, I have two fantastic guests. I have Elmby from Samsung, and I have Professor Magnus Söderlund from the Stockholm School of Economics. And we're actually sitting in the Samsung Experience Center out in Kista to get the setting a little bit more like experiential and store-like, to be able to imagine a bit on how it is then potentially to be in a store. Magnus is an expert and is a professor at the Stockholm School of Economics, an expert on loyalty and very much like the customer encounter. And I remember when I was doing my research, you had just, when I started in 2012, you had just released your book Kundmötet, which is really about the customer encounter and why we are then affected so much by other people. So very nice to have you here to be able to explain a little bit what's going on. And Anders, you're from Samsung, and you are managing the Nordic mobile experience division. I don't know if I got that right,
but you got it right.
Excellent. And you have many years' experience then with working in a store, with stores, with businesses in retail, and particularly then with products that have a pretty high then, I guess, experiential and knowledge value and complexity, which means that the store staff is, of course, very important. So welcome. It'll be a lot of fun to try to decipher some of these things together with the two of you. And just to start things up, I would want you to tell me real quick about a retail experience as of lately that has affected you. Let's start with Anders.
You start with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have to go back that far, actually. I was in Mall of Scandinavia this weekend with my daughter doing some shopping. You know, it's always a novel experience to go around with a tween doing shopping. And of course, main theme was cosmetics and stuff like that. So we went into Kicks, we went into Sephora, but I think the most eye-opening experience was the Lush store in Mall of Scandinavia. So I think I've seen, I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of memes going around on social media with regards to how Lush employees are being over-friendly and being too talkative in their retail settings and how they greet their customers and stuff like that. And therefore, I think, you know, from a Nordic perspective, that would be a sort of a clash in a retail setting, to have that type of approach to retail and greeting customers and taking care of customers in an over-friendly fashion. But I was actually pleasantly surprised, both with regards to the experience that I got, from the time when I entered the store up until I made my purchase, and also kind of the post-purchase experience with regards to loyalty club offers. When I finally reached the end of the purchase journey, I was informed by the cashier that actually today is bath bomb day and I will get this bath bomb for free. And also if I join the customer loyalty club, I will get certain perks. And, you know, I thought it was from an end-to-end perspective and a holistic retail shopping experience. It was a really good experience. In relation to the product as well, of course, because it's, you know, it's when all things are said and done, it's only bath salts, right? And foam bubble baths. So I was pleasantly surprised with that experience.
Come back to some of those things, I guess, then when Magnus can comment. But from you, Magnus, then, is there like a retail experience that you'd like to share?
There is really not one single individual moment that comes to mind, but it has happened to me recently several times, 3, 4, 5 times, that in various stores, convenience stores, bookstores, and so on, you are greeted in a authentic way, which differs a little bit from what it used to be, particularly during those days where you're not greeted at all. But it struck me that something has happened in retailing when it comes to this particular aspect. It's really not unimportant, because the first sort of impression is supposed to do important things to your view of a store or a person or whatever. So somehow it seems to me as several of those retail chains have got this right.
Are they authentic for real, or have they learned that authenticity is more important, do you think?
I think we humans can easily spot when it's fake. So in my mind, maybe I'm easily sort of fooled, but for me, it seemed authentic. And I think it would be relatively hard actually to train people to fake something that is supposed to be authentic.
Yeah, cool. And today we're talking then about like the customer encounter, the store encounter, and it's not disputed that for the most of customer journeys today in retail, the physical store, physical touch points have a part. Maybe not the most important part, maybe not the transactional part, but the vast majority of customer journeys, the store is there. And then an important reason for that is, of course, the possibility to meet the person in the store, and has been for a long time and is still. And I think that it's really interesting then to see what is, why is that, and what is going to happen going forward. So I think that that's a little bit where we will try to understand now where we're heading a little bit. But there's a lot of talk today about changes in retail. Some year the physical store is dead, and some other year online retail is dead, etc., etc. So since we have an expert here, Anders, or we have 2 experts, but an expert then on retail operations, could you just try to tell us what is really happening? Are there any big changes, or is it just business as usual from your perspective?
I think from a fundamental point of view, it's business as usual, but I think it's all also related to brand strategy, right? So if you have a brand strategy where you want to poise as a premium brand in today's market, you have to have also as a component, a pivotal component, I think, is the retail experience of your products. And it's also, I mean, a lot of industries with regards to products, with regards to innovations are maturing. And I think once an industry matures, and the novelty and products lackluster maybe in relation to earlier generations of products, it's much more important to convey the customer experience of the products in a retail setting in order to kind of position your products in a premium fashion. And I think that's the major change in retail going forward. And that's the major trend that I see with regards to the operations, that premium brands are investing more into retail, more into the people that are meeting the end consumers, for the reason of emphasizing their premium brand, I think, and to make sure that the customers are staying loyal to the brand, because a lot of retail brands today have a lot of loyal customers or illoyal customer bases, and I think the retail experience is an integral part of that in order to defend your position in the market or take market share in today's market, even in an omni-channel kind of setting.
Yeah, and since Samsung, I think you're like the 5th biggest or most valued brand in the world, I guess you would know a little bit and do some things right when it comes to building the brand and building the experience, I guess.
Yeah, I think hopefully, but I mean, Samsung specifically, we are a brand which is built on innovation, and for a long time, innovation in the product areas has been enough to entice the entice the interest of the customers and make them convert regardless of setting, even though retail has been the traditional one. I think today the demands and the requirements from the end consumers is much, much higher. You have to be able to convey a holistic customer experience of the products in a retail setting in order to, ratify your existence, basically. So I think that's an interesting shift, that customers are much more, they are more demanding, and they expect a really good experience in retail, and they expect to understand the customer experience of the product in a retail setting rather than just experience a product.
Yeah. Cool. And as I said, that big part of like the store, the physical store experience is the possibility, at least, of interacting with another person, with store staff that has knowledge and are authentic, maybe. But Magnus, could you give us like a micro lecture then on why is it important? What happens to us? Why do we want to interact and hang out with other people and also go to in a store setting then in particular?
I think most of us are more or less hardwired to be sensitive to what happens in an interaction with another human. That's the way we are built somehow. So this gives retailers really a very useful platform from an influence point of view, because it turns out that even small things, almost invisible things related to what the employee is doing, could have an impact in various ways on the customer. So I suppose most retailers, they would like customers to like being in their stores. They would like them to spend a lot of time in the stores. They would like people to buy things, and they would like them to return. And all of these things can actually be influenced by various things which the employee is either doing or being, because both characteristics and behaviors of the employee has been shown to have a pretty strong impact on customers.
Do you have any specific from your research? I know that you've done lots of research with people in store and also just smiling and some of those things.
Definitely, it's possible to make a very long list of all these things. But if we begin with something, it turns out that the mere presence of an employee is doing something to most people. So experimentally, it's possible to compare a customer experience in which there is no employee present at all, and there is an employee present. And present in this context means you're not really interacting with this person. The person is just visible somewhere in the background. So even this type of mere presence makes people feel better emotionally and more satisfied. So the employee doesn't even need to do anything in order to have an impact. Just being there would influence customers.
Yeah, and then you talked about authenticity. Are there any other important things from a store for the store staff then to add to an encounter with the customer?
There are millions of things. That's why this is so difficult. And many retailers today would have sort of realized this and want to capitalize on it. So many are now producing scripts with bullet points. These are the things you should do. So it's indeed possible to fill those scripts with so many things. So I don't really know where to begin. There are so many things. But some of these things are sort of common knowledge nowadays. Things like smile, eye contact, show concern for the customer's needs. And these are the things that also academic research tend to show that they do have a positive impact on customers. May not necessarily lead to an immediate purchase, but definitely some kind of satisfaction that make the customer come back later on.
So let's add kind of an emotional response in a way that you feel, I don't know, comforted might be a wrong word, but at least there's another human being there. Mm-hmm. Anders, you talked about it, and I guess lot of people, maybe not most, but a lot of people talk about experiences, customer experience. And I guess then, listening to Magnus, that the possibility then of staff in a store to enhance this and to create the customer experience is there. Is this something that will it grow going forward, or is it talking a little bit on the future then? Will the store staff be important for the customer experience also going forward, or what is changing?
Well, I think absolutely. I think it really doesn't matter what type of product you're selling in retail. Customers are utilizing retail for inspiration to a larger extent, I feel. They are using retail and the experiences in retail to reflect upon their own experiences in their own homes. So it doesn't really matter if you go to a store that is selling Samsung products, or if you go to a cosmetic store such as Sephora. Customers are looking for kind of a holistic experience, lifestyle experience to mirror onto themselves. I think that will be an integral part and a huge part of the reason for being and the reason for existing for retailers going forward.
But what's happening today now with store staff? Because it's getting increasingly competitive. It's getting increasingly, I guess, expensive also with store staff, depending a little bit on. And for you, for Samsung, for example, that sells a lot through other outlets where you don't own the store, but you basically sell your product. How is this going to work? Will there be more people in store, less people in store, and who will kind of run them, and what's going to happen?
Well, I think the mission statement for retailers is definitely becoming more complicated. And I think in order to succeed in retail, you have to have a premium somehow. You have to be able to invest into retail. You have to invest into the people that are meeting the end consumers. I think it's an integral part of our strategy to make sure that the end consumers, even though we, as you say, we are selling through our partners and our partners' stores, to facilitate an experience within those stores, both through staffing and kind of the setup of products and the physical setup in the stores, to make sure that there is a foundation for the customer to experience something out of the ordinary when they enter a retail location. And that, of course, it requires a lot of resources and it requires a lot of investment. I think retailers, reason for existence for retailers is, of course, to manage that. And I think premium brands are inclined to pay handsomely for that in order for the customer to have a really good experience. So I think for premium brands will strengthen their presence in retail. And I think premium brands will invest more in retail because they are premium and because it's needed in order for the customer to convert on the premium products.
There are also lots of tech things happening, sometimes replacing, or at least thinking about replacing, their chatbots and their robots and stuff. And I know, Magnus, that you are interested and have done some research relatively recently on some of these robotic service encounters and stuff. How does it work? Will that replace or just be an added gadget going forward?
I think there is a huge potential of replacing many people, and that's why so many are now interested in what should those robots or virtual agents or synthetic agents or whatever it is be like, so that we humans are comfortable in interacting with them. So a lot of research, not only by myself, but many others has already been done or is underway or whatever. So one main sort of takeaway from this is that as long as this agent, the non-human agent, is a little bit human-like in one way or another, it has legs, it has arms, it has a head, it talks with a human-like voice, and then this seems to trigger a kind of human interaction scheme in most people's minds. And so basically all those things that we think we know about what human employees should be like seem to be more or less useful, more rather than less useful for when it comes to how these robots or other synthetic agents should be like. So many have been trying to see what happens if a robot is expressing positive emotions vis-a-vis a user or a customer, if the robot is polite, if the robot is establishing eye contact and so on. And for sort of behavior after behavior, it turns out that we humans tend to react to those robots in ways that are very similar to how we react to real humans.
But are there any special things that will not, where the robots cannot replace? You talked about authenticity and some of those things, or are we translating that into like putting it, we don't expect everything from a robot, so if they are polite and if they're nice to us, we get positively then surprised in a way, or is it that they can replace and we see them as human-like for real?
I don't think we know this yet. There is a debate when it comes to what those things actually would be able to do or not do. So some think they will never be able to feel emotions in the same way as humans, and they will never be able to reason in moral terms. They will never understand what can be harmful for others or what is good or bad to do and so on. That's what some say. And others say that we have already built robots that can do these things. So that's really a question for the future. What exactly will be totally unexpected from those non-human entities? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows this right now.
What do you say, Anders? Do you have any forecast going forward?
Forecast? Well, I think it depends on the retail setting, obviously. But I think one interesting aspect of this is also the ability to connect to other people and to be a social chameleon to a certain extent. I mean, really good salespeople are hard to find still. And the ones that are the best, in my experience, are the ones that are able to be a social chameleon and adapt to social situations in relation to the customer that they have in front of them. And at the end of the day, the feeling that the customer leaves the store with has a lot to do with how they felt during the sales conversation and the human connection that they had with the salesperson, at least in a context, in a retail context where, you know, capital goods are being sold or more expensive products are being sold. I think it's difficult. In some retail settings, I think an adequate replacement could be artificial intelligence or what do you call it, non-human agent, or yeah. But in other settings, I think we're far away from that.
I think there's a lot. I'm not an expert in this research, of course, when it comes to robotics, but I think I'm reflecting on my own behavior when going and chatting with ChatGPT and stuff, and I'm actually polite. I almost say, "Can you please help me?" or something, which I don't know if it says more about me than about mankind. But in a way, it is. I think it's very interesting, these human-like traits and how we are acting, and I don't know if it's us wanting to project human-like aspects to robots, or if it's them giving us that, and how we mimic that. I think it's going to be very, very interesting going forward. And I also think it's very, very interesting with like the relationship then we will have. I think that for many with the robotic lawnmower, they have, or at least from my experience, they have names. So it's not just a product, but it's something. My parents had one, and that was Hugo. And it actually was a lot of emotions attached to that. So I think that that will say something, I would think, also going forward.
But the future will also produce novel things to think about, because many observers think that there will not be so that we are interacting only with one robot. There will be a big army of robots, and then we'll interact with each other, and we will observe what they are doing. So that's definitely another aspect to think of for those who are programming robots. What should they do in relation to each other, particularly when real humans are watching?
What would that mean then for us?
It means that you may have at your disposal several robots, and they will do different things. So sometimes you send one of your robots to interact with a second robot in order to accomplish some kind of task. And then maybe you will be able to see what your first robot is doing in relation to the second robot, and then the other way around. And then it turns out that if one of these robots is not so polite to the other one, you as a human observer will react negatively. So we are indeed sensitive also to how robots are interacting with each other.
Yeah, there are lots of interesting things. So maybe going forward, then we will send our robots to get the store experience then, and it's going to be the robots talking to each other that will actually produce the end store experience for us when we see it on a screen, or when they tell us when they come back from the store. This is what the Samsung experience has given me when I interacted with the robot in the store. If we do not think about like the long-term future when everything is robots, but say, okay, for now, the coming 3 years, what will be the biggest focus for you in the physical store environment, to make sure that you can be competitive?
I think for us in Samsung, it's definitely about bringing the customer experience aspects of ecosystem around products to life. I think for too long, customers in mixed electronic retail, for example, has experienced a very siloed approach to retailing. And I think there's been conversations about it since 15 years ago, where, how products are interacting with each other, how products in your home can become smart. But the real tangible applications of that hasn't really brought a good customer experience to the end consumers. I think we are at that threshold now where actually the products are making a difference in an ecosystem context. And to be able to visualize that and showcase that and explain that to consumers in a simple way and non-threatening way is what I see, coming 1 to 2 years happening out there in retail. The retailers that focus on the customer experience around not only buying the TV or not only buying the whatever product it is in a retail setting, but what the product brings in the context of your life, whether it's a connected life, whether it's a smart home. You mentioned the electric lawnmower, valid also for hardware stores. How do you want to design your life and your lifestyle around the premium products and the premium experiences that you will experience in retail? Because I think retailing is going to be much more about premium going forward, because the investments that are needed in relation to, for example, mechanized or automized retail experiences is going to bring larger demands from the end consumers.
And Magnus, what are you particularly curious about and what you see the coming few years?
What I think will come is some attempt to make the imbalance that exists now between online and offline from a data collection point of view, in the sense that it's so attractive to be offering things online because you can collect so much data about customers. Today, not that many retailers are collecting that much data when customers are visiting stores in a kind of offline setting. But I know, and others know perhaps even better, that things are developing so that it would be easier to collect data also in a offline kind of environment. I'm not sure that customers themselves would benefit so much from this, but if I were a retailer, I would feel that this gap is big, and I would like to know more about what is going on in my stores. And already at the moment, there are all sorts of things that can help you collect such data.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a good topic for another episode of the podcast, talk about data and what data you can have and cannot have, and what you can do with it in all different channels. Let's see if we can try to summarize this. We talked about that retail is business as usual still. You still need to be good. You still need to get the fundamentals right and meet the customer. Talked a lot about the customer experience, where the store staff has an important part. Lush was a good example of a brand that does that in a good way. And we talked about authenticity being something that is difficult to mimic, but really, really important. Going forward, we believe that the store staff is going to have an important role also to create the great customer experience, especially for premium brands, and that the tech side, robotic side, different ways of applying than the tech development will maybe be able to make a big impact and maybe replace some store staff and some tasks going forward. And the interesting thing is when we get robots to interact with each other also, so that it's not only human robot, but human robot human interaction. Thanks a lot for joining the Next Gen Retail Pod. Very happy to have both of you here. Thanks Magnus and thanks Anders. And I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and stay tuned for more things to come. Take care. Bye-bye.